Welcome to Goldfish on Games and Cover Disc Face-Off XL, which means for March of 1993 we are looking at the 5 big mags. Amiga Format, CU Amiga, the One For Amiga, Amiga Power and Amiga Action. Fight! Let's start with Amiga Power, that had just a single disc with 2 demos. And first up we have Body Blows, Team 17's first entry into a series that was their answer to Street Fighter. This, like so many other demos for beat-em-ups, is a 2-player only game. And the 2 characters are also pre-picked, and they are Dan and Ninja. Some highly creative names here. And this being a beat-em-up designed for the Amiga, it's a single button affair. So the moveset is a little limited, and you'll have to hold down a button and a direction to do most of the moves, but there are a decent number of them for you to explore and try and find out. But when it comes to the special move, it's as simple as holding down the fire button for a few seconds. For the ninja, that means mostly turning invisible in what is actually quite a neat effect, where Dan gets to throw a fireball. Interestingly, the magazine calls the character Dan, and also it has that name in the screenshots and in the demo. But in the final game, it was Nick. I guess they must have changed it quite quickly. Now there isn't too much to say about this game. It's not the best fighting game you'll ever find. Is it better than Street Fighter 2 on the Amiga? For the most part, yes, but still, don't expect anything too amazing. The second demo is for Sleepwalker, a game that I've dedicated an entire video to in the past, and it's one that I both enjoy and hate in equal measures, as it has this really interesting premise. You control Ralph, the dog, and you have to guide your sleepwalking owner across the map, making sure he comes to no harm, either by walking off ledges, into water, or even getting run over. This means pushing him forward, holding him back, or even giving him a quick boot up the arse to get him to move around. Oh, and running ahead and trying to clear out some of the traps that might be in the way is very important. It's a fun game, but it's also a very annoying one, as you might imagine. One of the other things that makes this game quite interesting is it was done in conjunction with comic relief, which is reflected in the bonus letters, which are now comic, and the fact that there is a few comic relief things through the game. Oh, and the full title has this lovely animated intro with the voiceover by Lenny Henry. In the demo, we obviously don't get all of that, but we do get some of the funny animations. What we also don't get in this demo is an entire first level. Instead, we get just half of it. And at one point you'll just come running up against a wall and you can't get any further. But with no real hint that you've gotten to the end of it, it's a little bit annoying because you think you're just stuck or you've done something wrong. They could have at least put up some text saying, "You finished the demo, well done." Now the full game was only 6 levels, so including the whole of one of these would have been giving away quite a large part of it. But I still think they could have done this better. So let's move on to the second magazine, CU Amiga, that managed to find enough content for 2 discs, in which they included 2 demos, a few utilities, as well as a program demo. And the first demo is for the frankly amazing game, Flashback. A bit like that Sleepwalker demo, this is just part of the first level. But what a part it is! I'm sure I don't really need to go into this game, but for a few of those that haven't experienced this back in the day or played any of the modern ports, this is a cinematic platformer in which you play as Conrad Hart, a man with no memory but a weapon. The game has this very fluid animation style, and our hero has quite the range of moves. The story is played out via these cutscenes that all have this stylized low poly look. that looked absolutely amazing back then, and I still think it looks quite good now, and looked much better than the CGI cutscenes that they made for the later CD-ROM versions. In this demo you will shoot some robots, as well as some mutants, and then pick up anything and everything you find. But be careful, as there are a few traps and it's very easy to die. But if you know what you're doing, it won't take long for you to cross the bridge, which basically marks the end of the demo, and you'll just run up against a solid, invisible wall. It really shows the game off in a great light, and I would have been so stoked to get the game after playing this demo. It's just a shame it's not as long as it could have been. When it comes to software, the first bit they gave us was a full copy of Reload Kick. This is a program that will basically make an Amiga running Kickstart 2 or later actually think it's running Kickstart 1.3, which does enough to make a number of older Amiga games run on a newer system. Now this was due to coders thinking that the Amiga would never change and taking the odd shortcut here and there, and I wish I had this back in the day, as I actually got some games with my 500 plus that wouldn't run, and this would have helped. We have one more program from CU Amiga, which is a demo for KidPix. This is a fairly in-depth art package for children. If the name didn't give it away, obviously, as there's lots of brush types and colours that you can choose from, as well as other tools like stamps. It all has some weird sound effects that you can turn off, thankfully. And amazingly, you can even save your images, which normally is the first thing that gets disabled in a demo like this. Some of the other features aren't available, and when you click on them, nothing will happen. But from what I played around with it, this seems like a decent little art program. And with that, we've come on to the final demo for CU Amiga, which is Super Frog. A game we've seen before, and we will see again. And in this demo we get a single level from later on in the game. It's actually the 4th level from the spooky castle. And I swear every time that we've seen this game it's had a different level. We might even be able to cobble together a good third of the game from the various demos that they released. It was quite interesting to see how this map changed from the final release of the game. It's not a huge amount, it's mostly little bits here and there, and stuff that you probably wouldn't notice unless you check directly against the final release. But there are some interesting little changes. One of the bigger ones though that I noticed was the absence of the bottles of Lucozade. Now I'm not sure if it was a case of they didn't have the branding at this point, or that they just couldn't use it with this demo, but this does mean that there's no way of getting your health back in the demo. Now it could be a case of they figured that you didn't need any more health as you have plenty of lives. Now the goal of Super Frog is simple enough. Collect enough coins and then open the exit and find it. This is obviously rarely easier than it sounds, as in these later levels you'll have to find switches to open doors, there might be multiple paths you can take, and there's even hidden areas that you can go down. All while having to deal with the collision detection, which is a little sensitive. Just grazing against the spikes while jumping is enough for an instant death. I do enjoy this game, even with all the quirks that it has. Now let's move on to the next magazine, Amiga Action, who also had 2 floppy disks with 3 demos as well as a PD title, and the first one is for Body Blows again. And while it has the same characters as the last demo, I think they might have had the right names, it does have a different background. But that isn't enough for us to check it out all over again, so let's move on to the first PD title of the episode, Furmire. A game that I feel is trying really hard to hide its heritage. Which is to say, this is a shoot 'em up construction kit game. You can tell this by the score font at the bottom of the screen. That, and it doesn't run as smoothly as it should do. But they have put hard work into this one, as it looks very nice. There's even this comet that flies across every so often. It is a very good attempt at making a shoot 'em up with that construction kit. They also made sure you can't just sit at one side of the screen and then avoid most of the baddies and make it to the end. Because the paths that they gave the baddies are far more involved than I've seen in most instances. But as is always the case with this UK game, there aren't any power-ups. Even if there are a few bonus points that you can pick up. And the bosses, well, they tend to be time limited. The first new demo that we're going to look at is Creatures. This is an enhanced port, or remake if you like, of a game that came out on the C64. We play as this creature, and we have to platform our way to the exit, all while trying to collect some of those flashing creatures that we'll see along the way. This feels very much like an old school platformer, as it uses that ratchet style scrolling. As in, you can move forwards, but not back. So you have to be really careful with how far you move if you want to try and collect some of those flashing things. I've not really played the original, so I can't say how much has changed between the two of them. But one thing I did notice is that you have a number of different fireballs that you can switch between. So you have some that might move up, or down, or in a wavy pattern. It makes taking out some of the baddies a little bit easier, as does the flame breath attack. Surprisingly, this isn't a single level demo, as we get a second one which is known as the so-called Torture Room. As our good friend Chip has been captured, and we have to work out how to rescue them in time, otherwise they'll be cut in half. So this is more like a puzzle room, with a nasty ending if you take too long. It seems like a fine enough game, but it didn't really click with me, so I'm not sure I'd return to it. The last demo is for Sensible Soccer. Wait, sorry, no, this is Unsensible Soccer. If you've seen any of the many Sensible Soccer demos that we've seen so far, you'll understand what's going on. It's the first to score a goal who wins. But here we have two options. It's either playing as a regular boring human leagues, or we get to play as apples versus oranges. The game plays out exactly the same, well apart from the odd banana being dropped. But other than that, it's just fruit playing with fruit. An oddity from a company that made some very odd and interesting games, but even with all this healthy stuff on screen, it's not the game for me. So let's move on to Amiga Format, who didn't push the boat out this month as they had a single disc with a single demo, and a few little extras. But what a demo they included, as it's the Hired Guns. That not only had a single player level to explore, but also a two-player mode so you could fight against your mate, and a rolling demo to give you an idea of how to play. The best way to describe this game is a sci-fi dungeon crawler, which I think you can sort of tell, from the 4 party members to the first person view that lets you take large steps. But they've replaced the bows and the swords with guns, and they've replaced the skeletons and monsters with skeletons? I'm not sure why there's walking skeletons in our sci-fi game, but let's just roll with it and shoot them. You can move each character around on their own, or you can link them up so they'll move together as one. And the controls are simple enough as it's all driven by the mouse. And I can tell you this is quite the in-depth game, and this demo has a lot for you to explore in this large building. As you'll have to go deep inside to find keys and switches and other power-ups. Now some of the puzzles will require you to have two characters. One can stand on the lift while the other one presses a switch. And as you go, you'll find items that can do all sorts of things like add new floors so you can pass over gaps. But this is a demo that I used to play quite a bit back in the day, but I never actually finished it. I'm not even sure there is a way to finish it, as I played it a lot just for this video, and I couldn't work out how to finish it off. But that's okay, as they included quite a lot of the game here. We have the auto maps, the teleporters, there's all sorts. And you know it's a good demo that even if you never finish it, you still want to play the full game, as you had a lot of fun with it. Being Amiga format, they had to include some extras, and this time they called it the serious stuff, and it's a bit of an odd bunch this month. There is a set of instructions on how to build a converter so you can use a Mega Drive pad on the Amiga, which is mostly about switching around a couple of pins for the 5 volts. It also gave you some code that you could read all the buttons. And the final thing they provided was how to build a voltage controller and program it from the Amiga. I feel they didn't have too much space left over after that Hired Guns demo, so they just threw on what they could. And this means it's time to move on to the final magazine of the month, the One For Amiga. That might have had the most packed discs of the month, as it had 2 with 4 demos and a PD title. And our first demo is for one we've already seen, it's Flashback, and it's the exact same demo. Still amazing, but no real need to go over it again. So let's move on to Woody's World. This is from a team that's done a few PD games before, and I believe this was their first commercial title. And it's looking quite nice and polished. We play as an elf, honestly that's what the magazine says, who has to clear out a series of castles, which mostly seems to be make it to the exit in a Mario style platformer. Also in Mario style, you have to jump on the heads of the baddies. The levels are slightly more maze-like, and you'll find multiple doors that you can go into, but most of these lead to bonus rooms. But you will also find items to collect, mostly gold that gets added up at the end, but every so often you might find something else. Like a scepter, that will turn you into a prince, which will then change your clothes, but also make you move faster. But then you can go on to collect a crown, that will turn you into the king, at which point you can then throw stars at the baddies. If I'd known about this game before, then I definitely would have included it into the Amiga's answer to Mario, as this one really fits the bill. As not only does it play like Mario, it's also very nicely done. I have to say I wouldn't mind tracking down a copy to give this a proper go. And it's time to move on to the final disc of the magazine, and we get another Super Frog demo. But amazingly, it's a different level. This one is based around the first world, and it also has a number of differences to the final release. But you're going to have to look hard to really notice them. But it plays exactly the same as the other demo. You can get wings so you can glide around, though I feel that you can actually fly with it. I think in the full release, it would only slow your descent, not allow you to rise up. But you can also get the spud that you can throw and hit some of the baddies. Not all of them, unfortunately, as you might have to jump on other ones, a couple of times in some instances, and then there's some that you just have to avoid, you can't damage them at all. It's a fun game even with those little annoyances that I've already mentioned, and you should definitely give it a go. Now let's check out the final PD game of the episode, which is Oblivion, that has this neat startup sequence mimicking an arcade booting up, which is apt as this is a clone of Defender, and a very well made one as well. It moves fast and fluid, and it looks the part. You get to fly around and shoot the aliens that are trying to kidnap the humans, all while trying to build up a high score. Most people should know Defender at this point, and if you're looking for a decent version of it on the Amiga, then this would be a good place to start. I'm not the most clued up on the game, but it does look like they managed to include everything from the arcade. And so I guess all that's left is to check out the last demo, and that's for Turbo Terminator, or as it was known when it was released, Prime Mover. It's a motorbike game in the style of Hang On. And it's very fast, or it will be once I worked out that you could tap the fire button to move up through the gears. And you have a single track and a set number of laps to race along. And unsurprisingly, it doesn't take too long to finish. This seems like a very competent racing game. It looks decent, it moves nicely, but I was finding it difficult to come up with things to say about it. I'm not sure this is one I would return to, and it's one of those games that if you enjoy bike racing, then I think this demo and game would be for you. And there we have it, 5 magazines covered and a decent number of games looked at. And as this is an Excel episode, we won't be ranking the magazines. Instead, I will pick my top 3 bits of software. And in third place, it's Reload Kick. I really wish I had this one back in the day. In second place, it's Hired Guns. An interesting demo for an interesting game. Even if it is one that I never quite fully finished for various reasons, I did keep trying. And finally, in first, it had to be Flashback. Yes, the demo is short and it doesn't take long to finish, but it is a great game and this demo would have gotten me hooked on it. And what do you think of my rankings? Did I get it right? Do you have something to say? Then let me know in the comments, wherever YouTube might have put them this week. And until next time, I was the Goldfish, that was our second Excel episode, and this was Goldfish on Games. Thanks for watching. I do love making these videos, they are a lot of fun to go back to these old magazines, so I hope you enjoyed it as well. And if you did, there should be some buttons around here that will let YouTube know. Or you might want to check out some of my other videos, there should be links on the screen right now.